Hello there and welcome to the webinar today. I'm just going to get everything set up to go here. We've still got quite a few people just joining in. So I just wanted to do a quick check to make sure my audio is working, and then we'll be getting running in just a second. As we're going through today, then please feel free to use the GoToWebinar control panel to post in your questions, and I'll be answering those live through the session and also with some Q&A live at the end. Hello there and welcome onto this webinar. Today we are going to be looking at the top 5 reasons developers choose RAD Studio Enterprise Edition. My name is Stephen Ball and I am the Pre-Sales Director here at Embarcadero. If you're watching this session live, then please go ahead and use the GoToWebinar control panel to drop in your questions as we go through the session today. If you're watching this on demand, then please go ahead and email me. My email is stephen.ball@embarcadero.com if you have any questions, and I can always help get those answered. If you'd rather, then please get hold of me on Twitter. @DelphiaBall is a great way to find me. So let's get straight into number 1, which is FireDAC. So FireDAC is our leading database connectivity components, which are part of the Professional Edition and also the Enterprise Edition. The difference between the Professional and the Enterprise Edition in some respects can be summed up pretty straightforward. Professional gives you great connectivity, but for local data only. So the data has to be located on the machine. There's not only licensing compliance for that, but there's also inbuilt checks within the product to make sure that the Professional Edition is only going to connect to local data. If you have the Enterprise Edition, then you can use the same database connectivity, but you can also then use that to connect to a remote machine across the network. So for example, if you've got a copy of InterBase running on your machine, you can connect to that with Professional and Enterprise. But if the copy of InterBase is running on a server elsewhere on the network, you'd need the Enterprise Edition to be able to access that remote data. The Enterprise Edition also brings in the ODBC driver. So the ODBC driver allows you to connect up to multiple different data sources along with the standard ones that are included. So that includes Advantage Database, Firebird, IBM DB2, Infomix, InterBase, MariaDB, Access, Microsoft SQL Server, MongoDB is then added as well as the DB2 within the Enterprise Edition. There's MySQL, Oracle, Postgres, SQLite, SAP SQL Anywhere, and then obviously I've mentioned the ODBC driver, but also the Teradata driver and the NoSQL database platforms are then also part of the Enterprise Edition. Now beyond that, there's also a few additional features that are in the Enterprise Edition for database administration and also event alerts, which don't make sense on a local database because you're the only one accessing that data. But for the for the Enterprise Edition, where other data sources are going to be making changes to that data, then having those kind of notification parts kind of makes sense. So some exceptionally powerful storage. If you're not used to FireDAC or you've not used it before, its background was written as a replacement for the BDE, the Ball and Database Engine, which was very, very popular from Delphi 1 all the way through up to recent times. Unfortunately, the BDE has limitations in terms of 64-bit support and even has some 16-bit elements within it, which means it's not really ideal for today's world. But the FireDAC was written to support the same bidirectional data sets and all the other kind of rich features that the BDE brought database developers for many, many years. and is really a big step up from things like DB Express, which was the original replacement for the BDE, which had unidirectional rather than bidirectional data. So it's a much richer framework. There's also great abilities to debug and do performance monitoring of SQL very, very quickly, just by dropping a couple of components and then using a remote application to see everything that's happening through the app. Now that provides a whole kind of additional layer within the whole kind of DevOps approaches. So it's some great capabilities within FireDAC that you have within the Enterprise Edition. Okay, so let's have a look at the second reason why developers choose RAD Studio Enterprise. Really, it's pretty easy to sum it up. It's the middle tier. Now, what is a middle tier? Well, most applications traditionally started off as client server. You'd have your database on your server and then your client applications connecting directly into that. And then we moved into a middle tier, which things like COM and Midas technologies were built, which allowed you to have the database layer, the middle tier with the business logic, and then the client, which then connected into the middle tier for the data processing and so on. And that's pretty much what we're looking at now. Now, middle tiers are great for being able to combine multiple different systems and databases together into a single layer, which can then be accessed by the client. That gives you a single sign-on in and the ability to then do a lot of the business processing and business logic within this tier here, hiding away the complexities of the back end to the client development. So this can be very powerful if you're looking at having changes or updates to the business logics based on different systems. You could even migrate, from one system to another, swapping out system 1 for system 2 over time, or even changing this for system 3, and then the middle tier updates the back end, but the connectivity to the client doesn't change. So it's great for being able to hide away and simplify some of the changes that you need in the back end. So multi-tier development uses the client server technologies that we've just been speaking about with FireDAC in the back here, being able to actually connect to databases across different machines, having the ability to actually load balance and have multiple tiers, so you could have the same kind of middle tier but run across 5 or 6 different servers to enable scale, and that then connects to the same databases but from different servers. So having the client server functionality of FireDAC is very, very powerful when it comes to kind of multi-tier development like this. And we've really seen kind of the rise of middle tier in recent years, especially with the whole kind of web and cloud-based environments that we're seeing and architectures that we're seeing today that are very popular. Now, that's seen a massive shift from what originally was done through COM to now being done through kind of HTTPS and having the secure connections with REST and everything, doing the connection between the client and the middle tier. So still you can be doing whatever kind of database connectivity or file access or whatever it is on the back end, and then just simple REST movement of data back and forth. Now, in terms of the setup and deployment of multi-tier, we're often seeing a lot now of things like Docker being used, which are containers, and the containerization of the middle tier, and also some of the back-end business logic. The containerization is something that we've been looking at Embarcadero, and there's support for that within RAD Server, which is one of the options for multi-tier development. And that makes it very, very easy to then build and test and check the configurations from the development machine using kind of the containers and the setup, and then having the same setup then pushed directly to live. So there isn't any kind of unknowns that you're going to fall about, because you're testing on the exactly same environment and setup and configuration. And that will kind of bring us nicely into our number 3 when we get there, our leave that as a slight spoiler for the moment. So in terms of the multi-tier options, obviously RAD Studio Enterprise Edition with the in C++ Enterprise provides 3 different options that you can use. There's DataSnap, there's RAD Server, and then there's the web services. So DataSnap and RAD Server are the 2 that are kind of really the key points here. DataSnap provides the ability to have session-based managed middle tier, so you can enable full callback functionality with a live handle directly from database from a component within the application. You can also have paging of data very, very easily with a T-client dataset and the remote dataset provider setting that up. So very, very easy to do. RAD Server has a very similar approach for some parts of that, but RAD Server isn't just the kind of data connectivity part and the remote functions that DataSnap provides. RAD Server is a full MEEP with push notifications and a number of different things, which we'll just have a quick look at those here. So in terms of the difference, obviously session management is available on DataSnap, but not on RAD Server. RAD Server is RESTful by its design. That doesn't mean that you can't page data, and there's some great functionality embedded in for paging data and pushing page 1 or page 2 or page 3, but managing that fully through REST query calls. RAD Server is fully RESTful. DataSnap can be set up to be REST-based, but also has the ability to have kind of the full active session management. The authentication is built into both platforms, and as I was saying, RAD Server provides additional push notification and embedded secure JSON storage, which is powered by InterBase. There's group access control management as part of the embedded user authentication that is part of RAD Server. There's also the ability, if you're doing an OEM deployment, to have multiple tenants running from the same RAD Server instance, which is amazingly powerful because that then provides you the ability to have multiple different sets of user security and the group management and everything depending on the tenant that is connecting in, which means that you can have multiple clients sharing the same server because it's all multi-tenant. One of the great things with RAD Server is that it uses Swagger to provide full REST API documentation. There's a kind of standard documentation built-in for all the core functionality, and then it's very, very easy to attribute the APIs that you're exposing just with some simple methods, attributes, simple attributes that you put onto the methods that you're exposing, and that then provides a full rich interactive documentation with the open Swagger UI, which is used by multiple different platforms and languages. There's also API analytics built in. Now this is very, very powerful, especially if you're looking at kind of configuring and managing when stuff is going to be done to your server. So if you need to schedule maintenance, or also if you want to kind of look and see, well, we've put this API together, when is it getting called? Who's calling it? How often is it being called? Is it something we need to support for the future? You can literally go in and find out which users are connecting in, how often it's being called, and so on. So that might give you a much richer prioritization in terms of the development that you're doing for your server and your middle tier that you're putting together, with a real rich insight that you can feed into the business. So this is a quick overview of the architecture of RAD Server, just to kind of give you the idea. So there's an InterBase database behind it, which is just for the management of RAD Server. You can then connect in for anything that you're providing out to any database. The InterBase database is provided because it's very, very fast, very small footprint, but then provides fully secure data storage for the user security and all the power in the back end, and whatever data you're pushing into it, it's fully encrypted and secure at rest, so you don't need to worry about that kind of side of things. And that's the kind of same kind of feature functionality that you would be looking at on a $50,000 licensed version of SQL Server in terms of some of the security level at rest data storage. So there's then two parts of RAD Server. There's the EMS server, which is basically what you build your endpoints to run inside. And then there's the console, and the console provides the analytics and management console element of it, which you can then log into as a back-end user. And they're deployed as two separate applications, so you can put them on different machines to keep one completely private inside the network, or have it as accessible via VPN, and then putting the EMS server out onto machines that then allow it to be accessed remotely or wherever you need to. So great flexibility, and then everything is then provided out through REST. So one of the other things I've mentioned, kind of push notifications, the data storage, the user management, they're all part of RAD Server. But one of the other things is this user location proximity detection, which we call beacon fence. And it uses Bluetooth beacons. You can set up and configure as many as you want. You need at least 3 to be able to triangulate a location. And basically it gives you almost like the ability to do indoor and outdoor, kind of almost like a bit like a GPS kind of tracking, but specifically inside buildings where it's hard to kind of get accurate tracking through normal methods off a phone. Using beacons can give you exceptionally close and accurate location sensing. So we have use cases, for example, there's a museum that is using this inside where they have multiple beacons set up. The visitors are then able to use a mobile device to pick up exactly where they are within the museum, and to then be able to identify specifically which exhibit they are right at. And the exhibit details will then automatically be shown on the phone. And if you've got kind of audio data with multiple languages, this is a great example of how something that is part of RAD Server can be used to then add a very, very powerful feature into the application. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely something that's worth having a look at. Use cases for enterprise. Obviously, you can look at where people are within the office, which desks are actively used. If you need to be able to find a hot desk at the moment where it's quieter because you want to reduce the risk of COVID cross-contamination where people need to be into the office, then again, you can do that. And in terms of monitoring who is in and where they are and the locations they're in, then this is again key for being able to monitor that and to provide a very, very rich intelligence that you can then track and work with. Now, on the diagram here, you can see kind of different zones that have been set up. And you can also set up very, very easily, as somebody walks into a zone, you get an event method fired on the application, and it then is able to then react and do something accordingly. So you could check as people are moving from zone to zone, do they have access to be there? Should they be there? Even down to the point of if somebody gets next to the door for the IT desk, for the IT server room, should the door be opened up because they're part of the team, or should it stay firmly locked? These are kind of things that you can then start having things interacting with. Very, very powerful and worth having a look at. So before we move on and have a look at the third item in our top reasons developers are using the Enterprise Edition, let's have a quick look at some of the RAD Server elements in operation here. And specifically, I just want to highlight how easy it is to push data out and have a fully interactive REST API very, very quickly. So I've built this using the wizard, so just go File, New, Other, and then under RAD Server, you can create a new package or a new module and just follow the wizard through. And it will put the components that you need directly onto the form and give the resource name attributes in. So my resource endpoint here is called exams, and we can see here I can just change this attribute for the class to change the name. And on here I have my query exam. Also have this TEMS dataset resource, which then allows me to define if I can list, get, post, put, or delete. So basically, fetch a list, fetch an individual item, update, delete the individual items that are in the query. I've got a key field which I'm using to identify the detail within the records. But also, this is actually quite a complex query in here. So rather than just having a standard query, which is quite easy to expose using this REST dataset adapter, I've actually got joins happening with different tables to fetch back extra information. So here the basic table is a set of exams, and then each exam is made up of a number of questions, and each question has a number of answers. So the first thing I'm doing is just returning back the exam headlines and the number of questions, so I can see quickly on the client side how many questions are in each exam. So we can see we can execute that here quite easily. If we go ahead and just run, I've already got it running here, so I'm just going to close that down here. We get a list of the endpoints exposed up. So we can see here I've got exams, putting the exam ID and then the questions, which is this one here, and then that will give me the questions for a specific exam. So let's go ahead and have a look. So let me just have a quick look for the exams. So here are the exams. If I want to choose a specific exam, so maybe exam 1, I can see here's the exam and then the questions. I need to remember to put the endpoint on. There we are. So here I can see the actual specific questions. Now this is great. I've got the questions. I now need to fetch the specific answers, which can be kind of quite long-winded. So what we've done actually, I've added in this questions full, which provides the exams, the questions in the exam, and then the answers for this question. So to do that, rather than having combined data sets, I've actually done this using just a little bit of code. So here we have a get method, and this is the entire code for that. So a query, and then checking that the exam exists, and if it doesn't, returning an invalid exam ID. Otherwise, I just kind of fetch the data, take the first question, and just loop through, use the response body JSON writer to start the object, put in the data for the exam, and then add in the answers. And you can see here at the top I've got a quick method just to convert each record into the JSON array. So very, very simple data. And that gives the example of the exam questions with all the answers. The one thing that we can do here using FireDAC as well, to allow the update of the exams using the post here, I've actually got this update SQL, and here I can see I'm able to modify quickly the insert, the modify, and the delete. So I can actually take the data that's being returned back and just say, look, ignore the questions part. Use this to build the SQL statement that we're going to use to update the record in the database. So just by doing that and providing the SQL mapping, I don't have to write any code to have read-write operations on that table directly through a REST API. So this takes literally minutes put together to provide full capability, and this component can also handle things like sorting. So I can do SF and then the field name to sort by that field name with the result data set. I can do paging, so I can put a query for page and the number of records I want to return on that page, and so on. So it's a very, very powerful way to provide a rich user interface to your data that can be consumed by a web application or or any other application, be it a desktop application or something written in any programming language. So that's pretty cool. Okay. So number 3 on the list has got to be Linux. one of the amazing things you can do today is obviously take your existing code and recompile it for the Linux platform. And that provides much lower cost of ownership and ongoing serviceability of your servers, which helps improve your margins, but also makes it a lot easier from a development point of view to incorporate some modern development practices like DevOps, to be able to test and configure using a Linux Docker container or other Docker or other container software from your development environment all the way through to production and test everything with the same things in place, which obviously makes it much easier as you bring products and software to market and to iterate faster and so on. So the Linux support provided includes the latest long-term support editions of Ubuntu and also Red Hat Enterprise. Now, additionally, you can also build desktop applications using FMX Linux and the plugin that is added into the IDE now for enabling the Linux platform to have a UI provided by the FireMonkey components. So using FMX Linux, you can use your existing macOS or even Windows applications if they've been written with FireMonkey, or even take code from your mobile applications and get that directly across. Now, with the runtime support and all the system files provided by RAD Studio, supported across all the platforms, it means you're really close to getting to Linux today already. And the ability to deploy directly from the IDE to a Linux box as well using PA Server makes it exceptionally fast to build and to deploy applications even directly from the IDE up to a Linux server. So this can be exceptionally useful, especially in a development environment, or even if you need to push build outputs directly from your local machine through to a remote server. Everything you need on the deployment settings, in the file setup, and the folder setup is really flexible and is fully there for Linux to make it an absolute breeze to deploy everything you need in the structure you need it directly up to the Linux box, directly from the IDE, and have that repeatable time after time. Now, in terms of the desktop applications, one of the things that is quite popular with customers is kiosk applications. So being able to have a locked down OS that has your desktop application running on it in full screen mode is a fantastic way to be able to reach out to provide rich functionality that allows users or customers to interact directly, which is fantastic. Number 4 on my list of 5 reasons to choose the Enterprise Edition is InterBase To-Go. So those of you who are not familiar with the InterBase To-Go version, InterBase comes in 2 versions. There's the Server Edition, which runs on Windows, Linux, or macOS, and that provides the ability for devices across the network to connect into a central database. And then there's InterBase To-Go, and InterBase To-Go brings a very small footprint database engine that's exceptionally powerful inside your applications. It's embedded directly inside the application. So as the application starts up, the database engine is available uniquely to your application. So in terms of being in the same memory space, it's very fast to work with. But the thing that really sets InterBase To-Go apart from other database platforms when it's completely embedded in is the full user security, the full on-disk encryption, which provides the best in terms of data protection, and also things like industry standards like PCI compliance. The encryption levels within InterBase allow you to have different data using different encryption keys. So, for example, if we talk about PCI compliance credit card data, where you need to have a separate security encryption code within the database for the credit card details compared to other personal data that you might be encrypting. You can do that because you have full column level and database wide level encryption of the data. Having the full inbuilt user security allows you to provide decrypt functionality to specific users, allowing you to have managers and say, for example, HR people, defined by their role, access to different data with default values if people don't have access to it. So, for example, you can still do select staff from employee, but only the HR people will be able to see the column that gives the current wage for that person. So, great for being able to do a number of different kind of setups. Now, the InterBase To-Go license that's included in Enterprise is for iOS and Android. So in terms of deployment to the app stores or onto corporate devices that are being shared with people who are mobile, then you have full encryption at rest, which is fantastic. This makes it ideal for kind of going out and doing on-site maintenance and job records or whatever you need to do, capturing things off the phone, camera, into the memory, storing it with the jobs that are being processed for the day, having all that data locally cached so you don't have any worries about internet connectivity in the deepest, darkest concrete jungle, wherever you are. But one of the great things about InterBase To-Go is it also includes the IoT award-winning change views capability. Now, change views allows you to track and provide data out to multiple different endpoints. With a simple device ID, you can start a subscription active on the database, run your normal SQL, and it will then just give you the delta of what's changed since the last time you ran that SQL statement. And you can then cache that, do whatever you need to do in terms of taking it from the local device, putting it back to a central server, and then committing up to that point. So it's amazingly powerful in terms of moving data around. The actual IoT award it won was for most innovative use of data at the Total Telco Awards, which was a global award, which was fantastic. And one of the amazing things from a developer's perspective is having InterBase on your development machine. It's the same on-disk structure for the databases that works out on the mobile platforms as well. So as a developer, you can actually get the database back. You can work with it on your machine if there's ever any issues or things that you need to look into. But the great thing about the encryption is that even as a developer, you can take the database and still only see the data that you should be able to see based on your role. So even if you took a database from a production machine that had HR information in it and you ran select staff from employees, because your username and password don't provide access to the HR information, you're not going to be able to see it. So in terms of a compliance point of view, it provides something way beyond the kind of level of security that you can implement and justify with things like SQLite on a mobile platform. So just to show you how easy it is to use it, I'm going to show you an app that I've written myself that's in the app stores and uses InterBase To-Go on the mobile. So here is my application code, and I'm just going to show you quickly the data module that I have for the database. And I share this data module between a desktop application that I use for putting a whole load of configuration data together and data that's populated for remote tables, and then ready to syncing it back and forth. So my database connection here is common. I've got my database, I've got my physical IB driver link, which basically connects it up to InterBase, and the GUI wait cursor. They're the only three controls that I need for the basic control of it. And within the database connection here, we'll literally just set the path to the file that the location where it is. My username, my password, I just changed for stars, obviously for specific reasons. And then the only other thing that you need to set up is the SE password. So that's just secure encryption password. That is created at the point you create your database for the first time. And once you've created the database on your development machine, all you need to do is then just make sure that it is actually deployed to the device with your application. So under project deployment, all you need to do is come in here and add feature files, tick the InterBase To-Go, and that will enable that for the platforms that you want to run it out to. And then the only other thing you need to do is just put the database in. So, for example, let's just find the database. So here I have my local path for the database from my project, and here I can see the directory that it's going to be pointed out to. So startup documents, and in fact, if we just click on the local path here, this is the iOS 64-bit. If I go and have a look at the Android 64-bit, you can see it's just .assets/internal, and using that, I'm then able to just at runtime, as I create my data module, I'm able to just set up here that if it's not on Windows, use the set the driver link to be light, which means it's the embedded version. That's FireDAC's way of saying use the embedded version. And then I can just use the tpath.getDocuments path and put in the database file name, which I've got listed as a constant above, and just set the database path. And that's it. That will set the database pathing, connect to the database, and off we go. So it really, really is as simple as that. That's all you need to do to have it working on your desktop and on your mobile device. So the fifth thing to speak about is the enterprise connectors. Now, one thing that is clear today is the world is shifting towards these microservices, shifting towards software as a service, where there's lots of different applications that we're integrating and working with. And on average, enterprises are now sorting out around about 20 different SaaS applications that they're working with, be it from SAP to Office, to Jira. There's a whole host of different things that you could be looking at, and one of the things that the enterprise connectors gives you is the ability to connect into over 90 of these leading enterprise systems, but by extending the FireDAC connection with special kind of drivers that basically then almost treat these enterprise systems like another data source. And then you can query them and interact with them using pretty much standard SQL. So rather than having to write and decode and sort out all the different APIs, you can just link to the enterprise connector and put the data in and work with it. So these enterprise connectors, they are royalty free for distribution within your enterprise. If you are going to be embedding them into an application and distributing them, then there is a runtime fee for those. However, obviously, if you are looking to use them and embed them into your applications and you're hosting your application, then you have got the ability to put them on your server and use the connections. So one thing that these really come into power on is behind something like RAD Server or DataSnap, where you can host a single sign-on and have all these different enterprise connections coming back into the organization through a single point of access. That's the beauty of having a good middle tier, is that you can use things like the enterprise connectors to bring and to merge all that data together quite easily on the server side. Being able to query multiple different data sources, combine them, and then provide the resulting data set back, it is immensely powerful. So I'm just going to quickly jump here to the Embarcadero website. This is by far the best place to come and have a look at the details of the enterprise connectors. There's a great page here that lists all 180 plus and growing, it's constantly growing, of the enterprise connectors. There's the ability to kind of get directly into some samples, and you can see exactly how easy it is to select specific stuff here. This is from Salesforce, so you literally just set the driver name in the FireDAC connection to cdata.fire.salesforce, and you can then set the parameters up, set the queries active, literally do select staff from accounts where industry equals healthcare, and you've got full access to that data. It works with SQL compliance. You can interjoin things, aggregate functions together. Very, very powerful indeed. And in here you can see the Enterprise Connector Professional. That's the version that is included with the Enterprise Edition. And then there's the Universe, which is there's additional ones that you can buy and add on. But you can see here straight away, everything in white is included through. Things like Act CRM, Facebook ads, MailChimp, which is very popular for mail merge and mass mail. A lot of accounting software from FreshBooks all the way through to Zoho Books. Some great SaaS solutions. A number of different SQL database, NoSQL and big data databases. Office 365, which I mentioned already. WordPress, which is obviously really popular for many of the leading websites that companies are building and using. And then even down to e-commerce, with direct access into PayPal, to Stripe, to eBay, to Woohoo, to Xcart, and so on. There's some great connectivity. And then also on the social networking side, things like querying what's happening on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Salesforce Chatter, Slack, Twitter. There's a great chance to be able to directly access into all of these different systems, and then just do it with standard SQL. So a lot quicker and easier to ramp up and get deployed and get using and accessing in. And then again, further things like Amazon S3 storage. Obviously, we've got components for doing that as well. But again, this can make it quite easy to query some of that in a simpler fashion using SQL kind of syntax. And also Gmail, which is obviously very popular. So huge number of connections to have a look at. As I say, there's some great getting started examples to get you going directly from the website. And one of the things that is exceptionally popular within the Enterprise Edition. So that's pretty much it really for the top 5 reasons developers choose the RAD Studio Enterprise Edition. So to quickly recap, FireDAC obviously provides blazingly fast client-server connectivity, and that then opens up the door to doing access to data off the local machine. That plays an important role if you're looking to go to multi-tier at any point, and having tools like RAD Server with the full MEEP with push notifications, the analytics built in, all the user grouping and security that's built into the back end is phenomenal. Obviously we have Data Snap as well, which provides closer integration to Midas and also has the ability to do immediate callbacks, with state managed from the server. So it doesn't scale as much, but provides rich functionality for immediate connectivity compared to RAD Server that is fully fledged MEEP with full RESTful and much higher scale. And then obviously Linux, which enables you to take your multi-tier development out to a much cheaper hosting and gain the benefits of having cross-platform native code blazingly fast across Linux, which makes it a lot easier to integrate things like DevOps into your processes and to have smoother movement from development all the way through to deployment. And then obviously we have InterBase To-Go, InterBase being an excellent database to choose to run across Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, and Android with the same on-disk structure, with the exceptionally rich data security and easy access into features that you'd normally find in the top enterprise grade databases, but deeply embedded into a mobile application, which really sets it apart from anything else in the market. And then in terms of accessing into the wealth of SaaS products that are out in the market today, the enterprise connectors expand FireDAC even further, providing exceptionally simple low-code approach to getting into a range of different enterprise systems very, very easily, which is great for multi-tier development, or even can be used through normal traditional client-server applications. So that's it. That's my top 5. I hope you found this interesting. It's now time to open up for Q&A, and thank you for joining us. Okay, so hopefully you can all hear me fine, and I'm just going to try and see if just get the well, hopefully you can still see the questions panel up on the screen, which should be good. Okay, quite a few questions just popped through, so last chance to pop any questions in for the Q&A. Please go ahead and just post those in. But thank you for the questions that have come in already. There was a question from Stephen just asking, as of RAD Studio and the IDE element, but not of RAD Server. So yeah, RAD Server really came out from originally from Enterprise Mobility Services, so the EMS components that were added a while back, and RAD Server is basically the latest name for it, and it gives, as I say, full capability to run a MEEP within your application, and that enables the RESTful backend to rapidly share out data in a full REST compliant way, with paging and sorting and all those kind of things that you'd expect to have without having to write a single line of code, and the ability to control, the ability to insert, update, delete, list, or to just fetch a single item through the HTTP verbs that are part of the component that we had a look at in one of the demos earlier. So very, very powerful way to expose out data and get that accessible by any platform using REST. And then also, as we saw in the sample, you can still code and define your own data packets very easily if you've got edge cases that you need to work on or set up. So all of that is very easy to do with the JSON writers and readers, and just use some standard SQL, some standard Delphi or C++ code on the back end. So the way RAD Server is working there is it's actually producing packages that run alongside the core engine that's pre-compiled, ready to ship out. And as we saw, the ability to run that across Windows or Linux makes it very, very powerful and quick to deploy and get out. So there's also a question here about the enterprise connectors. Someone saying they've got enterprise or recently moved up to enterprise, and how do they find the C data? Well, if you go to if you reach out to your salesperson or drop me an email, then I can send you the link over. Basically, there's a promotion page online which you can put your product key into, and from there you can then download enterprise connectors. Or it gives you what you need to go and kind of get them. You can just visit the CData website to download what you need. So I'll put the 2 links into the chat, but if you don't get them from there, then please feel free just to send me a message over. Okay, couple of questions around the beacon fence. Some say they've been trying to use it, but struggle a little bit. Okay, one of the key things with the beacons is that there's varying qualities of them, and also you tend to get slightly better results from beacons that are plugged in rather than battery powered. However, that said, it really comes down to the frequency that you got the beacons pushing the data out. The longer the time interval between their notification that they're existing and they're there, the longer the battery will last. But you can set up with many of them, you can have a control panel set up where the beacons tell you if they're running out of battery and all those kind of things, if they are just battery powered ones. But the key thing I'd say is make sure you've got them mounted as high as you can, because of the way Bluetooth LE works, and I can't change the laws of physics, unfortunately. Line of sight provides the most accurate results. So being able to mount them high on the wall, or even on the bottom of ceiling tiles or something, will give you the best response from the beacons. So definitely worth having a play around with. And the more you have, the more accurate result you're going to get in terms of the triangulation. But yeah, it's been a few years since I bought some, but I certainly found I had the best result from a little one that just plugged into a USB port and ran. And I used to be able to get very, very accurate response from that with line of sight. So a few of you agreeing in terms of the top 5 things here. Also comments and suggestions for other things that would maybe be in your top 5, which is always great. I've mentioning here some of the modeling support within Enterprise Edition is absolutely fantastic and really useful. Absolutely agree with that. Being able to model and view your objects and how they link together is a great way to be able to visualize your code in a different way, and helps you kind of code in a more productive way. That's again another top reason to move in, but one that's been around for quite a while now as well. So trying to pick a few of the slightly newer bits around the edge. Yep, mentioning the UML modeling and also some of the code analytics. Some of the code analysis stuff is good. A few of the bits are a little bit outdated now because they've not quite got the latest support for some of the newest language features that have come through. But still, a very useful way to pick up and see what's in your code. And they still do provide a certain amount of power. And for those of you who haven't seen the DevOps infographic, then if you Google Embarcadero blogs and infographic, you'll be able to find a really nice infographic with lots of different areas that RAD Studio fits into around DevOps. And there's some great third-party components and plugins that provide some great functionality within those areas as well. So code analysis is obviously a great thing to look at, and available through the product and also through the community. So a couple of questions that are kind of off topic, so I'll probably kind of just defer those onto another session another day, specifically about Linux and ARM processors. But yeah, it's something that's always being looked at and considered and monitored. I know if you've got specific business cases, then more than happy to hear your business case around it, because if we can show the right business case for the community, then that also gives us a better chance of being able to invest the substantial amount that we need to into new compilers and to bring those forward. But obviously, with big outlay to put into it, we need to make sure that the business case stacks up for everybody to make sure we can get that to market for you. So if you do have a big reason for getting that, then please feel free to reach out to me or a member of the product management team. The other thing I would say is that there's many of the micro boards can be loaded up instead of with kind of Raspberry Pi, can be loaded up with things like an Android distro. And obviously, if you can get an Android distro working on it, then you can reach that today with RAD Studio. So definitely worth having a look at if you can get Android onto the boards that you're looking at, or look for another alternative low-cost board that you can run Android on. There's a question earlier on about the BDE, still using it. I'd definitely say if you're still using it, it is time to maybe look at other options, especially with the the security implementation implications that the BDE has. Especially with the 16-bit and the kind of the weak security elements around it, certainly wouldn't be putting kind of major business application data through the BDE nowadays. Especially if you're wanting to kind of keep on the right side of the legal requirements around GDPR and other kind of storage of data and personal identifiable data. The great thing is that there's a very quick and easy way to move off the BDE, and FireDAC is the ideal replacement for it. And the way to do that is using Refind, or there's commercial tools that are available that do a great job helping migrate and modernize code as well, like the Delphi parser. So there's a number of options to look at to help you move up and to keep modern. Yeah, Thomas just asking further out the boards. I believe if you Google Malcolm Grove's Android and Raspberry Pi, you might find a blog post he did a few years ago now. I think he was using a BeagleBone Black or something. I can't remember the exact name of the board, but he had a very similar board that was getting an Android distro running up on. So there's a number of different ones that you can look at. Okay. Just kind of having a quick scan at a couple of the other questions here. Okay, I think I've pretty much covered the core ones that are being put through there. I can't see anything else that's particularly uncovered in terms of the answers that I've pushed back. So I think we're almost at the top of the hour. So thank you everyone for joining us today, for the questions, for the conversations. If you do have any questions, or if there's anything that I've missed that you'd like to get a response to, then please feel free just to drop me an email over, stephen.ball@embarcadero.com. If you are needing any further advice or want to have any further conversation about anything that you've seen today, again, please feel free to reach out to me or your local Embarcadero representative, and we'll be more than happy to chat further with you to help you make sure you're getting the right thing for you and the work that you're looking to do. So keep an eye out on the blogs for more news and events, and also some exciting stuff that is just around the corner. I'll leave it at that for the moment. But yeah, keep an eye on the blogs, especially over the next few weeks, and look forward to being able to welcome you back onto another webinar very, very shortly. Okay, everyone, take care, keep safe, and see you all soon. Goodbye, happy coding.